Well, boy, then we'll learn us woman. All right.
Sauti yako nikisikia pia natulia, yanipunguzia hasira nazo. Neno wako lininasa roho, siku ya kwanza kukuona kwa macho. Sa moyo nimekwambia siwezi kutania, ndio nipunguzie mawazo. And I feel you in my head when I breathe. I see you in my dreams when I sleep. You're the one I've been waiting for all my life. And deep down in my heart I believe when I feel like feeling real. You're the one I've been waiting for all my life. Mungu sawa na wote malaika na mababa yao, wote wanafika wenye mama yao. Wewe nachagua sisemi nao, sisemi wote yuko sawa na wote malaika na mababa yao, wote wanafika wenye mama yao. Wewe nachagua sisemi nao, sisemi oh, sisemi. Sawa na wote malaika na mababa yao, wote wanafika wendo mama yao. Wewe nachagua sisemi nao, sisemi ope yuko sawa nao, wote malaika na mababa yao, wote wanafika wendo mama yao. Wewe nachagua sisemi nao, sisemi ope yuko sawa nao, wote malaika na mababa yao, wote wanafika wendo mama yao. Wewe nachagua sisemi nao, sisemi oh, sisemi.
Just pay attention to our video. Always giving a phone. So say something now for
Check.
There is still check na check. Go enter for the meeting, time correct for talk before we talk.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's cold, but it's better than it was melting. My name is Dan Mongi. I am going to be moderator for the day. I shall do further introduction a bit later on. Just to let you know, first and foremost, we are very grateful that you've made it here this early morning. Especially those of us, I know there's some night owls. That wake up in the morning. You know the people who go to college in high school or sleeping. Those ones. So thank you very much for the sacrifice and for just being part of this. Just to let you know, we apologize again for the slight delay, but our chief guest is around. It's just in a short briefing. In fact, within the compound, he shall be joining us in a bit so we can kick it off. And I believe it's going to be a great experience altogether. So just let Momoyo continue briefly. She's doing a good job. But our name is already around, so once it's here, we shall just pick up and go. Thank you.
This time we are in.
No, we don't say that we in task.
Now, if we don't want to talk for the man,
Tuko pamoja na kuliko jana.
I believe say all these people they no stop number one.
Yeah. This one I see there. This one. This one.
Hata
Baadaye kustabu the same when you make changanya mimi mimi na wewe tuendelee, you treat me like a lady, kwako sitawahi kudelay, na siamini vile wanipenda, ni kama siri kati yetu mahbuba. Smells so bright, I'm gonna lose my mind, moyo unapasuka kusikia sauti yako. Baby, you're so fine, I want to be your wife. Moyo unapasuka kusikia sauti yako. Baby, baby, oh, moyo unapasuka. Baby, oh, moyo unapasuka. Baby, oh, moyo unapasuka.
Good morning. I would like to thank you and to welcome the CS, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. Let's appreciate him. Let's all be upstanding. Check. Okay. All right, thank you very much for making time to be here with us this morning for the Inclusive and Justice Social Protection Africa IJSPA conference. For the avoidance of assumption, my name is Dan Mwangi. I am a journalist. I'm the digital and innovation editor at NTV Kenya, and I am a business news anchor. In my other life, I'm also a poet, so I can write things that at least got me a wife. Those who need consultancy services, the young men here could see me during the tea break. At this point, before we have any much further ado, I'd like to invite us to stand up so we could sing the national anthem, and Wamoyo is going to be leading us with the same. So I request that we supply the microphone to her so that we could, oh, it's here.
O God of all creation, blessed is our land and nation. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Let it be found within our borders.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. And as we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge once again the presence of Simon Chelugui, who's the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. We also have the Chief Administrative Secretary in the same ministry, that is Patrick Olentutu. Thank you for joining us as well. And we also have the leadership of the PASGR, who will be coming to speak to us briefly as they will be introduced. So at this point, I'd just like to share some quick house rules so that we are all on the same page, and like I like to say, of the same book. We could all be on page 16, but different books. So we just need to make sure it's the same page of the same book. First and foremost, just the house rule, like I said, let's put our phones on silent mode just to avoid any interruptions that may be a bit distractive. Let's have our phones on silent mode. Remember, we are still in a pandemic, and Delta is not gone. And so would like to be careful not to abuse the privilege of having such a meeting. So would like to just remind everybody to make sure that you heed to the protocols that have been laid out, and just for avoidance of doubt or assumption, once again, let's make sure we wear our masks and wear them properly. I know some of us usually wear them on the chin. I usually wonder whether it's the jaw that's falling, so you're holding it in place. But I'd request that we kindly make sure that we're wearing our masks at all times, and just observing the social and physical distance. It may be cumbersome, but it will keep us alive. We also would like just to remind you to make use of the different sanitizers that are around the facility. In the event that you need to step out or to go into the washrooms, they are to our right opposite the registration desk. There are washrooms there, so feel free to use them as and when you are able to. Just to also remind you, because you're having recordings, if in the event you're passing in front of a camera, just be cautious. You could go around it, just so that we avoid, especially the main ones, for instance. Aside from that, if there's any other need that you'd like addressed or attended to, we have our team that's seated outside here who could guide you on the same. So please feel free to do that. Another thing that I would like to request, that has been a request from the technical team, those of us who are here physically don't need to be logged on to the Zoom platform. So if you're here and you're logged onto the Zoom, would like to maximize the internet connectivity for the main stream so that we do not have a weaker stream. And anyway, whatever is on Zoom is going to be projected here. So kindly please log off your Zoom if you're here physically, because we shall have all this in place. Now, the online etiquette for those of us who are joining us online, as is being indicated, our login time is a bit different, but we are here and we're ready to go. Our chief guest is here and we are very grateful. Please rename yourself. Some of us are called Black Panther or Rino Mobutu Sese Seko. So just kindly just rename yourself on the Zoom platform so that we could have a clear indication of who we are with. For roll takers, please use the email protocols. For attendees, please use the your country _ name, for example, hashtag Tunisia _ John Doe. So if I was joining from somewhere else in Nairobi, I would write Kenya _ Dan Mwangi. Then keep your camera turned off until when prompted to turn the video on. This will improve the bandwidth for all logged in across the world. Remember, this is not a Kenyan event. It is a global one, and we're just privileged to be having it hosted in Kenya. Aside from that, mute your microphone at all times until when prompted to speak. Please use the chat icon to raise your questions, and the chat master will read them out. This will reduce disruptions, and we shall be guiding on that as we go along. Then we have, just to remind you that this is it's a bilingual event, like I said, because it's not Kenyan. So for those who are online, there is English to French translation that can be selected from the channel. So you have that option, as well as in regards to the online do's and don'ts. I've already shared the same. And let me confirm that I've read all that is needed to be guided on the same. Yes, and so once again, welcome and thank you for this. And because we are a bit behind schedule, we may be late, but we're on time. We are on time to get the timely messages that are here. So at this point, I'd like to, I believe there should be someone from Tamarind Tree Hotel to just affirm us about the COVID-19 protocols preparations in terms of just affirming to us that we are good to go. We will put it that way. I'm not sure how close they are, because if they're not, I could still just affirm that we have the sanitizers. Okay, we have the sanitizers and we have the running water and soap in the bathrooms. We have, in the event that your mask gets contaminated or compromised in any way, we could supply the same, I believe, just to be safe, because we really want to be aware and alive to the fact that we are in a pandemic. So now at this point, I'd like to invite Dr. Martin Atela, who's the head of research and policy at PASGR, who's going to give us the convening address, after which he will invite the executive director of PASGR, that's Dr. Anthony Mveyange, who will then invite the chairman, Professor Narciso Matos, who's the board chair, who will then invite the CAS, Patrick Tutu, who will then invite our chief guest, the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. So, Martin, Dr. Martin Atela, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Are we already tired? It's morning already, and there was coffee and there was tea, and
just for our speakers, just remind you that this microphone is for the online audience, and this is the one that is for locally.
The Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection in Kenya, Honorable Simon Chelugui, the Honorable, sorry, I'm managed to hold the microphone, the Honorable CAS for Labor and Social Protection, Honorable sorry, technology. I hope you can now hear me properly. I'll start that again. The Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection in the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Simon Chelugui, the CAS for Labor and Social Protection, Honorable Tutu, the Board Chair for PASGR, Professor Matos, the Board Chair for African Platform for Social Protection, Dr. Diabo, the representative of the African Union Commission, colleagues, researchers, civil society organization representatives, as well as the media. Good morning. I'm very excited today because what I've been asked to do is to tell us why we are here. So that's going to be a very easy task because we already know why we are here. If we didn't know why we are here, we wouldn't be here. All right? So I'm very pleased that we have found time to join us for this important meeting on inclusive and just social protection in Africa. We do not take it for granted that you make time. I know that there are a lot of colleagues that are joining us online, as well as the colleagues who have joined us physically, who have made time to be here with us. The Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection. Africa is a continent of stories. And one of the things you learn as you go through school, as we educated in this country, is they tell you storytelling was one of the most important ways in which our elders passed on their knowledge to the young ones. Okay? So I want to use this opportunity to tell a story as to why we are here. Several years ago, about a decade ago, I was a young Kenyan student outside of this continent, struggling to find knowledge, struggling to find a space and a career path in a continent not very far from here. My efforts to look for education were hampered by an important global event. The outbreak of the swine flu, otherwise known as the novel influenza virus, H1N1. I don't know how many of you will recall when that happened, but I was a graduate student. And because of that happening, first I contracted H1N1, and I've survived and I'm here. I developed great interest in researching how health impacts the security of countries. So my interest took me back to Africa. Okay? I went and spent a bit of my time in Botswana and spent a bit of my time in South Africa. I'm bringing this story because it's an interesting one. I spent my time listening as part of collecting my data for my master's thesis, listening to generals in the Botswana Defense Forces, as well as generals in the South African Defense Forces, on how HIV/AIDS was affecting their preparedness, their security, and their ability to respond to the challenges of the countries they're supposed to defend. Okay. Fast forward, we are here today in a period of COVID-19. And I say this because, like it was then, my findings, which I would be glad to share with you, seems to be true as we speak here today. One of them is that most of our countries are not very prepared to respond to global pandemics, or let me call them global shocks, that in many cases tend to affect the most vulnerable in our society. So that's number one. Number two, there's a lot of siloed approach to work, both in government as well as with development partners. All right? So the World Bank would come to Kenya, they set up and run their own social protection program. FCDO in the UK would come and set up, run their own program. Organizations such as ourselves, PASGR, would set up our own program. The Ministry of Labor would set up its own social protection program. In the case of Kenya, we now have county governments. So the Honorable Minister is making efforts to make sure that the most vulnerable get, for instance, cash transfers. Then the governor of Narok also has set up his own cash transfer program. In many cases, these programs don't speak to each other. So there's disintegration. But a more important thing which brings us to this conference today is the place of social protection as a program that ensures just and inclusive delivery of development programs. We say that because social protection is at the center of humanity. It's about the dignity of a person. Okay? It's not, you know, people would use the term beneficiary, but when you look at the societies that we want to build, if we are talking about not leaving anyone behind, then we are talking about ensuring the dignity of every member of our society. And social protection is at the center of that conversation. Now, 2 years ago, I didn't know that I would be privileged to be in a situation where the Open Society Foundation would come to PASGR and talk to us about designing a program that will help us rethink about how we do social protection in the continent. Why? Because we were looking at the disintegration that is happening, the role of government vis-a-vis the role of non-state actors. Okay? We were looking at how do we bring back the voice of the African in social protection programs. This morning I was part of a conversation that I won't reveal that talked about the significance of the African traditional systems in guaranteeing dignity for everyone across the board. And this is part of the conversation that has brought us here today. So in the last 1 or 2 years, we've worked with partners across the continent, the University of Pretoria, Uganda Christian University, the University of Ibadan, the Open Society Initiative for East Africa, as well as the African Platform for Social Protection, to design a program that can challenge us as Africans to rethink about how do we deliver a more effective social protection program that responds deeply, one, to the context and our culture, but two, is sustainable and actually restore the dignity of our people. So this is actually the conversation that has brought us here. And as my colleague Daniel, I think, will be presenting one of the evidence here, we'll talk to you about, we looked at issues of innovations, we looked at interventions, and those two issues led us to say, is social protection still very much driven by neoliberal Western thinking? Or is there an opportunity as Africans, thinkers, scholars, organizations, governments, to come together to really rethink about how we do social protection, to bring social protection back to where it belongs, the culture and practice of African countries? So colleagues, I'm very proud and excited that you found time to join this conversation. In the next 2 days, beginning today, we will be delving and looking at the evidence around interventions in social protection. And so in your program, you will notice that both Professor Winnie Mitola and Professor Eric, who is seated just next to me here, will be presenting some of the evidence that we have found over the last 1 year on this. And then tomorrow, we will be taking a step back to reflect. What is it that we want to do with this evidence? What does it mean for moving this agenda forward? And it is our hope that this will lead us to a call to action to all stakeholders on how we can together work together to improve the social protection agenda, particularly in the context of COVID-19. So I don't want to take more time than that. I want to say that across the board, we have different representatives. We have civil society organizations, we have the media, we have scholars joining us online, we have government officials, we have the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection here, we have the African Union joining us as well, we have colleagues perhaps from the World Bank, colleagues perhaps from other development partners such as FCDO, and you're all welcome to this important conversation. So without taking much time than I have already taken, it is now my privilege and honor to welcome Dr. Anthony Mviange. He keeps warning us that we have to be careful about pronouncing his second name because we don't have the insurance, should we end up swallowing our tongue. So Anthony, it's my privilege to welcome you to kindly come and address this meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Habari ya asubuhi. I don't know, how do you say that in French? Done. Bonjour. I always tell people, don't try to pronounce my second name, precisely because I don't have insurance. If you bite your tongue, you are in trouble and you're on your own. The Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Labor and Social Protection, Honorable Simon Cheligui, the Chief Administrative Secretary for Labor and Social Protection, Honorable Patrick Olentutu, the Chair of the Africa Platform for Social Protection, Dr. Boniface Digabo, Dr. Thomas Ongolo, the Advisor of the African Union Commission, representative of the diplomatic community who are probably here or online, representatives of the civil societies and grassroots organizations, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. Good morning from Nairobi, Kenya. At least today it's not, it's a bit warm. It's not as chill as it used to be in the last few weeks. It gives me so much pleasure to welcome you all to this Pan-African Conference on Inclusive and Just Social Protection in Africa. This conference, as Martin has alluded to, has been organized in partnership with the African Platform for Social Protection and the Open Society Foundation. You'll all agree with me, this convening is not only timely, but also relevant in light of the great uncertainties and difficulties our countries are going through at the moment. The COVID-19 pandemic has unraveled many things, opportunities and challenges alike. The pandemic has compelled us to think not only differently, that innovatively, in co-creating pragmatic, data-driven, evidence-based solutions to social protection challenges faced by countries across the globe. At the same time, the pandemic has exposed our weak and vulnerable points in providing social protection to the citizens who needed them the most. This has been one of the fundamental challenges of our time that we are individually and collectively as countries grappling with across the continent. Please allow me to provide statistical context. Before COVID, statistics indicated that more than 82% of the population of Sub-Saharan Africa did not have access to social protection. As a result of the pandemic, it is estimated that unemployment rates in the continent have increased by 0.7%, resulting into about 40 million newly poor Africans and eroding the progress of poverty reduction across the continent. In fact, the World Bank 2020 report shows significant reversal of gains on the fight against poverty and inequality since the onset of the pandemic. It is against this backdrop that the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research, PASGR for short, in collaboration with the African Platform for Social Protection and the Open Society Foundation, has convened this timely and important conference. Some of you might wonder, what is PASGR? Martin has talked about his experience, but he never got into talking about PASGR. So please allow me to pique your curiosity and give you a brief tour of our Pan-African institution, one of our greatest assets that we have in the continent. PASGR is an independent, non-partisan Pan-African not-for-profit organization established in 2011 and headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya. Currently engaged in more than 25 African countries, we strive to advance research and training excellence and generate evidence in public policy and governance that shapes policy discourse across countries. At the core of our work is a firm belief in homegrown African-centric data-driven evidence. If I am to relate this noble endeavor to my years in secondary school, back in Tanzania, I'm a Tanzanian, so Kenyan, you have Magufuli in the house. It speaks squarely to the famous Song of Lawino and Oko by Okot PB Tech, especially the poem Let No One Uproot the Pumpkin in the Old Homestead. In the same vein and in true Pan-African spirit, PASGR works very closely with African academics. Martin said we have professors in the room, higher education institutions, research think tanks, civil societies, governments, business and police communities, both in the region and internationally, with three intentions. First, to support the production and dissemination of policy-relevant research. Second, design and deliver suites of short professional development courses for researchers and policy actors. And finally, facilitate the development of collaborative higher education programs in Africa. We believe this will create a vibrant African social science community that is positioned to address continent's public policy and governance issues. You might be wondering what this conference on inclusive and just protection is all about. Martin has alluded a little bit, so allow me to indulge you a little more. Well, this conference builds on a decade-long solid record of PASGR in generating evidence, sustaining dialogue, and engagement with stakeholders in social protection in Africa through our innovative approach of using research to inform policy called Utafiti Sera. Utafiti Sera is a Swahili term that translates as research and policy. The presence of the Kenyan government in the room, the presence of all other partners online today is a testament to that. Utafiti Sera is a model of an inclusive and constructive policy deliberations and decision-making platform with the desire of building a common understanding of policy issues among both state and non-state actors in Africa. Through the Utafiti Sera platform, PASGR has progressively opened space for previously sidelined actors to contribute to the social protection agenda and for citizen voices to be represented in social protection agenda. Conferences, meetings, reports, declarations, and social protection is in Africa a commonplace. There's nothing new so far. Your next question, if I guess, will be, what makes this conference different? In other words, what makes PASGR present this conference to our society today and tomorrow? Unlike many platforms whose focus is themed to a fragmented specific program or context, for example, the famous and widely celebrated conditional and unconditional cash transfer programs, we ambitiously are taking a holistic approach reflecting on the whole architecture of social protection and how that translates into meaningful outcomes, not just for recipients, but for the African continent as a whole. We seek to acknowledge and leverage on our identity as Africans, to look within and reflect on the resilience of our own indigenous social protection practices, embedded in shared values and principles of humanity, reciprocity, and solidarity. Fundamentally, PASGR and our partners ask, why have they endured? Questions that Martin was raising. What can we learn to shape or refine formal and informal social protection processes and articulate the hybrid framework that is fit for Africa? We do not stop, but keep asking more hard and practical questions. For example, how can Africa realize the scalability and ownership of experimental innovations to unlock their transformative potential? How can Africa optimize the opportunities and mitigate the challenges of leveraging digital technology in the design, delivery, sustainability, and accountability of its homegrown social protection programs? We were chatting with the CS and CAS today about what Kenya is doing in that space. Very good job. How can Africa effectively leverage the voices and representation of the citizens in decision-making and accountability for social protection? How can African states rebalance their balance sheet to sustainably finance social protection? We also had the same conversation with the CS. How do we own the process? They cannot be donor-driven all the time. As Africans, if we claim to think as Africans, we need to own the process. And how do we do so? This conference will try to answer some of these questions. And finally, what can African states learn from the resilience of indigenous social protection systems in the design and delivery of sustainable and accountable social protection frameworks in Africa? These questions are relevant, yet difficult to answer. Worth noting, they have not been explored deeply and holistically by the vast existing literature on social protection in Africa. Our daring and continued quest to engage and interrogate and find answers to these questions through our Tafiti modus operandi to generate robust, credible, and sound evidence for informed policymaking is undoubtedly timely. This conference provides that unique opportunity to deep dive and seek answers to these questions, to explore more innovative, inclusive, and just solutions to mitigate social protection challenges in the continent. What next after this conference, you wonder? If I guess, and I hope my guess is as good as yours. Is it going to be business as usual? That is NATO. NATO as NATO. Do you know what NATO stands for? Can somebody guess? No talk, no action, talk only. NATO, not the NATO, the Western, no, NATO as NATO, NATO. If I may borrow, that saying, I usually hear that from Vimal Shah, the CEO, the top CEO in Africa, in East Africa, the Kenyan. So he always say, we keep talking, but no action. No action, talk only. The answer is absolutely no. Allow me to give you 2 reasons why. First, this conference serves to progress the dialogue on building the Africa we want, as articulated by the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. As a proud Pan-African institution, PASGR prides in generating demand-driven evidence that finds its way to the policy-making processes in Africa. The need for sustained dialogue and engagement is therefore coexistential in progressively realizing the Africa we want. Second, in collaboration with our donors and partners and governments, we endeavor to actively engage all stakeholders from recipients, grassroots mobilizers, civil society, policymakers in actualizing the outcome from this conference. That is, the post-COVID-19 social protection agenda for Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much to say and talk about social protection in Africa. And I cannot finish them within the 10 minutes allocated for my opening remarks, obviously. But I'm sure for the next 2 days, we will all learn and exchange a plethora of knowledge and experiences, in addition to forging the relevant professional networks needed for realizing the African dream. That is building the Africa we want. Please remember, and I say this in capital letters, please remember PASGR is your partner and a strong ally in this journey, and our door is open for engagements and collaborations. Together, we can, if I'm to borrow Obama's words. Now, with all those remarks, please allow me now to stop here and welcome our chair of the board, Professor Narciso Matos, who is joining us straight from Mozambique to give his remarks, and invite CAS Honorable Patrick Olentutu. Professor Narciso, if you're online, please welcome. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Bonjour, bon dia, Jishile, salam. The Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Labor, Social Protection in the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Simon.
You could unmute your mic, please, Professor.
Say it again. Say it again.
Your mic is muted, Professor. We understand technology caught us faster than we were ready for it. But
how about now? Can you hear me now?
Is it possible for the admin to unmute him? Huh? Okay.
Online, colleagues can hear me. Can I proceed? Yeah, I know the colleagues online can hear me loud and clear, but in the room, apparently they cannot hear me. I'm sorry to everyone, but it's the Reggie that has to sort out the problem.
They're about to cry.
I know that the online audience can hear me, but in the room in Nairobi, they cannot hear me. So if you can hear me, Anthony, if you are online, what I suggest is that you just move ahead. There is no gain in derailing the conference because of what I needed to say. So please proceed, and when you manage to sort out the problem, come in later. Gain in derailing the conference because of what I needed to say. So please proceed, and when you manage to sort out the problem, come in later.
Let me know if you're good to go. All right, Professor, I think we are good to go. We can now hear you.
Yes, but there is a return there. Yeah, someone has to disconnect something. Hello? All right, I think we are now good to go. Can you hear me in the room, please? Can someone from the room signal that you can hear me? Can you hear me in the room? In Nairobi? I can see the gentleman standing next to the flag. Can you signal to me if you can hear me? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me hope and pray that social protection will work better for us than the technology is proving to be. Good morning, bonjour, bon dia, salam, Zishile. The Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, the Honorable Simon Shelugi, the CAS for Labor and Social Protection, the Honorable Patrick Tutu, the Chair of the Board for the Africa Platform for Social Protection, Dr. Boniface Degbo, the Advisor to the African Union Commission, Dr. Thomas Ongolo, the Executive Director of PASGR, Dr. Anthony, I will not pronounce the second name, government officials present, the representatives of the diplomatic community, members of the research community present, members of civil society organizations represented across African countries, the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. First of all, let me wish all of you from Maputo in Mozambique that you are in very good health for you and your families, because we know all what we face these days. On behalf of the Board of Directors of PASGR, on behalf of partners, on my own name, I am pleased to welcome you to the Pan-African Convening on Inclusive and Just Social Protection in Africa. Let me start by appreciating the team of PASGR in the name of Dr. Anthony, the Executive Director, to appreciate the African Platform for Social Protection and the Open Society Foundation, who worked very hard to organize this event. I thank you for your commitment to social protection, and I thank you for bringing us together for this conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, with COVID-19 and the challenges we face, not least the access to vaccines, I'm sure we will all agree that social protection is of paramount importance now. The previous speakers highlighted the ways in which we can contribute to improve the way social protection has been offered and is being offered in our countries. The most important message will be, how do we generate evidence-based proposals, recommendations, ideas, which will go then to inform policy? What's the role of research to improve the way in which social protection is being offered in our countries? My role today, however, is simply to welcome the Honorable Patrick Tutu, the Chief Administrative Secretary, who will later welcome the Honorable Minister, Cabinet Secretary to deliver his keynote address. Before I step aside, it's my duty also to recognize the participation and the support of partners. I wish to recognize the participation and support of the government of Kenya, of the Africa Platform for Social Protection, who have engaged with us in testing the applicability of the findings of previous research. I also wish to thank and extend our thanks to the Open Society for Eastern Africa, the ULIT Foundation, the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and the MasterCard Foundation, who have generously provided the necessary resources to organize this event. Thank you. Without your support, we certainly could not be sitting around the table to discuss this today. I hope that we will use the opportunity not only to learn more about social protection in our countries, in the continent, but perhaps even more importantly, to build relationships, to strengthen our networking capability, to come out of the room knowing more colleagues with whom we can continue to do this work. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to welcome the Honorable Patrick Tutu, the Chief Administrative Secretary, to invite the Honorable Simon Sheluji, the Cabinet Secretary, to deliver his keynote address. I wish us all very rich 2 days and very strong and unbiased discussions. Kanimambo, asante sana. I wish us all very rich.
Yes.
You're welcome to clap. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman. We'll now let the CAS speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Professor Matos, we hear you loud and clear. Our Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, Mr. Simon Chelugui, the Executive Director of the Partnership for African Social and Government Research, Dr. Anthony, I'll not try the second name, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Partnership for Africa Social and Protection Research, Professor Narciso Matos, the Chairman of the Board of the African for Social Protection, Dr. Boniface Diagbo, Advisor to the African Union Commission, Dr. Thomas Ogalo. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. And I hope it's still morning. Dear participants, my role today is to welcome our Cabinet Secretary, who is our chief guest, to give us his keynote address. But before I welcome him, with your permission, sir, let me make a few remarks. The theme for this conference is innovative, inclusive, and Afrocentric social protection, leveraging voices and representation in the area of the pandemic. It's very thought out, provoking, and it is therefore my belief that by the end of this conference, a lot will have been learned that will go a long way in shaping how we perceive social protection in Africa. Let me start by saying, ordinarily, people love to be self-reliant. Therefore, we must not treat the recipient of social assistance as lesser being in our society, but rather we must treat them with dignity. With this in mind, I don't know whether I've messed up with the stand. Sorry about that. There's a wellbeing. Sorry about that. With this in mind, government, both the national and devolved units in our various countries, we must there prioritize social protection. Social protection must not receive what remain after all the other services have been allocated budgets. Instead, it must be treated first among the government budget line, because this is what connects the government with its people. We can build roads, schools, and all other infrastructure, which we must do. But without people to use them, this will be a wasted investment. And it is for this reason that we must continue reminding ourselves as government that we need to invest in social protection. Because, like I said, it connects with the people directly. We must also be bold and see social protection beyond social assistance. For this to happen, all of us here today, and those not presently represented here, must think completely without the box. We normally like saying, let's think outside the box. Let's get away with that box. And we see the new and emerging realities of our time. As we make our country's budget and make investment decisions as private citizens, we must think social protection. Ladies and gentlemen, many strategies have been tried, especially on social assistance. The one intervention that I have personally and what we have been doing as a country, seen working, is when we give cash directly to people, rather than giving people food. Giving people cash allows them to make decisions on the use of that money, which gives them dignity and choice. This also creates opportunities for people to make savings and start small businesses, which may eventually remove such people from depending on government and society for their daily needs. It is my hope and prayer that this conference will re-energize all of us to rethink and come up with a new strategy in social protection to build the Africa we want. With these few remarks, it is now my duty and honor to welcome you, sir, to speak to us. Welcome, Waziri. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our Chief Administrative Secretary, Honorable Patrick Ntutu. The Executive Director of the Partnership of African Social and Governance Research, Dr. Anthony Veyange, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Partnership for Africa Social and Governance Research, Professor Nasiso Matos, the Chairman of the Board of African Platform for Social Protection, Dr. Boniface Daekbo, very difficult African names, the advisor to the African Union Commission, Dr. Thomas Ongolo, the board members of the African Platform for Social Protection participating virtually, and I'm told we are now about 100, representing East Africa, North Africa, West Africa, South Africa, and Special Needs Group, representatives from the diplomatic community, all government officials present, the research community, civil society groups across Africa, grassroots mobilizers, humanitarian organizations present, recipients of social protections in Africa, the further state, distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning in Nairobi. Thank you. Because I realize we have different longitudes, and some people are just waking up, some are going to after. I don't think in Africa we have reached afternoon in any part of Africa. Allow me to welcome those visiting Kenya and Nairobi for the very first time, and everyone else who has joined this conference today, including virtually. Karibuni sana, karibuni Kenya. Hakuna matata. It is indeed with great appreciation that I join all of you this morning to open this auspicious Pan-African conference on inclusive and just social protection in Africa. Convening this conference is indeed timely when we consider the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on social protection and support structures that have been stretched to the limit in every society across our continent and even globally. Despite the significant efforts that have been put in place by many governments in Africa to cushion our people from the negative economic consequences of this pandemic, it is estimated that unemployment rates in the continent have increased by 0.7%, resulting in about 40 million new newly poor Africans, thus eroding the progress on poverty reduction efforts across the continent. Faced with this common struggle and common desire to emerge stronger as a people, it is hence important to come together as Pan-African community to deliberate and exchange ideas and build the Africa we want. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya has made progress in the social protection sector. Being the host country for this conference, allow me to start by sharing with you the evolution and expansion of social protection in our country. Our government, through the State Department of Social Protection, under my ministry, seeks to ensure that all Kenyans live in dignity and can exploit their full human capabilities for their own social and economic well-being. As part of these efforts, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection launched the National Safety Net programs in the year 2012 with the aim to consolidate and enhance efficiency in the delivery of the 4 public-funded cash transfer programs, namely the Older Persons Cash Transfer, the Orphans and Vulnerable Children Cash Transfer, the Persons Living with Severe Disability Cash Transfer, and the Hunger Safety Net program, which had been operating individually for over a decade. The Hunger Safety Net program in particular demonstrates our government's commitment to reduce poverty as articulated in Kenya Vision 2030. The National Safety Net program currently covers over 1.3 million vulnerable households who receive monthly cash transfer of Kenya shillings 2,000 paid through contracted payment service providers under the choice payment model, with the payments being made every 2 months to beneficiary accounts to ensure dignity in the provision of service. And I like the definition of our first speaker, that social protection is actually about dignity, humanity, leaving no one behind. Currently, these programs are reaching an estimated 12% of vulnerable population in our country, which is a substantial increase from the 500 households of orphans and vulnerable children targeted at the start of program 2 decades ago. Ladies and gentlemen, my ministry continues to come up with strategies and systems aimed at ensuring that existing social protection programs continue to contribute to improved livelihoods among the target vulnerable populations. To further strengthen provisions of social protection services, my ministry, with the support from the World Bank and the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, started the Kenya Social and Economic Inclusion Project, KSEP, in March 2019. The objective of KSEP is to strengthen the social protection delivery systems for enhanced access to social economic inclusion services and shock responsive safety nets for poor and vulnerable households. Importantly, KSEP will enable establishment of an enhanced single registry that will contain data not just for beneficiaries of the cash transfer programs of government, but also data on potential beneficiaries of social protection programs. And I wish to affirm or confirm to you that this single registry is not just going to deal with the identified vulnerable groups of our society, the older persons, orphaned children, or people living with disability. We have other forms of, or other vulnerable members of our society, which we believe as we progress, we will incorporate them, we'll onboard them, and this single registry will be used to support and benefit them. This could include people affected by natural disasters like floods. Some people have been displaced through cattle rustling and some form of insecurity in some parts of this country. This program will support and enable these beneficiaries to enjoy this program. So what government will be doing, even in addressing in food insecurity drought-affected communities in our country will not be carrying food and transferring materials to those vulnerable members or affected. We'll be sending cash through this registry. We'll just map and isolate that group, affected group, and transfer cash. And businessmen, suppliers of food and materials will find their way to these beneficiaries. That is efficient, that is a more effective, and it is a more dignified way of dealing with vulnerabilities in our country. So this single registry, we thank our partners and those who develop this system because it makes our work much more easy. And when we get donors, like recently when we were supporting the new vulnerable as occasioned by COVID, we got many donors who came to us, including Give Direct. And using that system, we were able to support households in informal settlements in Nairobi, like Kibera, Korogocho, parts of Mombasa, who are identified using our government system, Ngao, and the local administration. And we were able to reach out to over 328,000 Kenyans living in the urban poor who are affected by lockdowns and COVID protocol containment measures that government issued during the outbreak of COVID. So fellow participants, these efforts will go a long way in promoting evidence-based programming in the social protection sector and further enable effective and vertical and horizontal expansion in provision of social protection services. The enhanced single registry will further support rollout of timely shock response interventions in the country. Through the government, through KSEP, the government will roll out a nutrition-sensitive cash transfer program to counties with high levels of stunting and malnutrition, pilot economic inclusion intervention, and promote structured increase and enrollment of National Safety Net Program beneficiaries under the National Hospital Insurance Fund. 1 month ago, we launched a partnership between our Department of Social Protection and National Housing Insurance Fund to cushion, in addition to cash transfer, to cushion and enable, or rather subsidize the health cost, out-of-pocket expenditure by these vulnerable members of our society. So government is injecting 600 million to NHIF directed towards the vulnerable members of our society. So through our social review and research, we established that other than livelihood costs, the vulnerable members of our society also require health cover. Most of the aged, the older persons have underlying conditions, and some of these funds that we are sending or transferring to them end up being used on medical costs. To reduce the burden on these vulnerable members, government found it necessary to provide medical insurance through National Health Insurance Fund to cushion further our vulnerable members of our society. This way, the 2,000 that we send to these members of society can be utilized on livelihood expenditure. This social protection program, from our research, has led to extension of life expectancy in this country. From 10 years ago, when we did our last census, the life expectancy of women in this country was 51 years, and men were an average of 55 years, and men have moved to 52 years. A huge increase in life expectancy. through more and more intervention and partnership with and donors like World Bank and World Food Program, UNICEF, we will see our gradual progress towards the best life expectancy recorded in countries like Norway and other countries like Finland, whose life expectancy is 74 years. This is our dream as a country. This is where we want to go. We want to prolong, to increase life expectancy of our people in this country. The National Safety Net Program, therefore, and the KSIP set a good foundation to guide strategies that can inform cushioning of our people from negative economic consequences of poverty and, without doubt, COVID-19 pandemic. Distinguished participants, allow me to report here today that beyond the now singular and regular and predictable provision of cash transfer to the National Safety Net Program beneficiaries by government, in July 2021, the government provided Kenya shillings 26.3 million top-up payments to 12,054 National Safety Net Program benefiting households who met the eligibility criteria for nutrition through cash and health education nature program under KSIP. To further protect and mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on majority of households in our country, and as part of response mechanism in April 2020, our government introduced the Pandemic Response Management Bill 2020. Article 30 of the bill prohibits employers from terminating contracts or dismissing employees during this pandemic. In addition, revisions have been made on the Kenya National Social Protection Policy 2011 to provide for adoption of life cycle-based approach in a provision of social protection services. This will ensure essential protection will be availed to citizens as established by the law under International Labour Organization recommendation. Unlike 2011 policy, revised social protection policy comprises of 4 key pillars, namely income security, social health protection, shock response social protection, and complementary services. This approach challenges Kenyans to position social protection beyond short-lived cash-driven instrument to transformative instrument with potential for economic and resilient building, hence creating opportunities for those who are vulnerable in our society. We have made many affirmative actions by government, including the procurement system, where we have given special consideration to vulnerable members of our society, the women, youth, and people living with disability, to expand opportunities for them. So, distinguished participants, this significant transformation in social protection is not limited to Kenya. Across Africa, positive news on innovative strategies and programs to deliver social protection to the poor and vulnerable abound. The Africa Union Agenda 2063 framework, the Africa we want, and specifically aspiration number 1 of a prosperous Africa, based on inclusive growth and sustainable development, with 3 national targets set for 2023, is one such example. Allow me to remind us the 3 national targets which all countries in Africa need to set by year 2023. And these are: number 1, at least 30% of the vulnerable populations, including persons with disabilities, older persons, and children, be provided with social protection. Number 2, all our persons working in the formal sector be provided with social security. 3, at least 20% of informal sector and rural labor to have access to social security. In my ministry, through National Social Security Fund, we started a Haba na Hapa program targeting border borders, the mama mbogas, the informal sector. We have about 16 million out of 19 million, 16 million are in the informal sector. 3 million are in the formal sector. We need, according to aspiration number 1 of the African Union, we need at least 20% of this by the year 2023 to have access to social security. And Kenya has begun through NSSF Abana Hapa program. We expect those in the informal sector to make a daily contribution or a monthly contribution that will build up to a future social security when they retire, at least when they hit the retirement age. Kenya is one of the nations that have taken heed to this challenge, and I commend all African nations that have also taken up this challenge. I welcome all other nations to take up the challenge to ensure realization of our shared aspiration of the Africa we want. You know, in the past, we have been told Africa is a black continent or is a dark continent. And sometimes we believe Africa is dark or Africa is black. But in terms of tomorrow and the promise of the future, Africa is bright. Through these programs and initiatives that we are doing, rolling out today, engaging with our lower cadre of our society, pushing the level, pushing the level higher and higher every day, Africa is bright. Despite very remarkable success stories, many African nations remain a long way from achieving long-lasting transformation of individuals and communities targeted by our social protection programs. Gaps and challenges still exist that this conference can deliberate on and provide innovative solutions. My expectation is that during the 2 days conference, we will foster our collaboration, learn from one another, and reflect holistically on the entire architecture of social protection in Africa. This way, I believe we can jointly articulate an hybrid social protection framework that is appropriate for Africa. I note with confidence the conference approach to reflect and learn from the resilience of traditional social protection systems present in all societies in Africa. Our realities demonstrate that the most available and reliable system is one that is embedded into our African value system for cushioning humanity, reciprocity, and solidarity among our people. And I think the first speaker embedded there started with an African story, which has been written by Chinua Achebe. I've read the Chinua Achebe books. It talks of stories in the evening. It talks of wars. I don't know why African stories are always surrounded by wars and hunting and fighting and all these African stories. I think the intention was to create courageous and sometimes aggressiveness in fighting, hunting, and fighting. But I think that has been overtaken now by knowledge-based technology, digital world, and a village, economic village, a global village in our society. So this should be embedded. And as I say, cushioning humanity, reciprocity, and solidarity among our African people. I also note that the conference brings together beneficiaries and recipients of social protection services, grassroots mobilizers, civil society actors, and policymakers from across the continent to deliberate on issues on social protection guided by rigorous scientific evidence. This indeed is a solid, constructive environment that will help all of us to realize the Africa we want. As I open this conference, allow me to commend the partnership of the African Social and Governance Research, the African Platform for Social Protection, and Open Society Foundation for the research and funding for making this important and timely conference possible in these times of great uncertainty in our continent and in the world. And as I conclude, it is my prayer that all the stakeholders will find this conference worth their time and its outcome, the post-COVID-19 social protection agenda for Africa, useful for progressing their efforts in improving social protection in our continent towards our shared aspiration on the Africa we want. I think what we've heard and said in this and by the speakers who have spoken before, including the chair and the professor who spoke to us from Mozambique, is that Africa is yearning for change. Africa is reflecting. Africa is looking inward on the challenges facing us. And governments from our African Union that brings together over 54 countries are doing introspective reflection of their social challenges, poverty, vulnerability, the challenges, the wars, the floods that we face, creating so many millions vulnerable people, naturally, and some of them man-made. It is time for us in Africa to now move forward and push the bar and bring out the less fortunate in our society to live in dignified lives, to work decently, in make productive contribution to the well-being of their nations. Africa, as I said, has been called a dark continent from those days that we struggled to free Africa from the yoke of poverty, diseases, and illiteracy, to now a prosperous Africa, the Africa we want. Africa must be finally conquered, not again through the blood and the evil of setting one community, suppressing others, but through the forces of enlightenment, service, and provision of social protection services, that Africa is bright. So, as I open this conference today, it is incumbent on all of us and all governments and all the partners that participate in reducing the incidence and the level of insecurity in our society, to actually share experiences, benchmark among ourselves, and lift Africa from the levels that we are right now. I believe with these interventions and the targets that we have set ourselves through the African Union and individually as African nations, Africa will not be the same again. The less fortunate in our society are integral members of our society, the older persons, our vulnerable children, people living with disability, people who are suffering from terminal diseases that have bedeviled Africa. The insecurity and lawlessness that we see in some African countries need to be dealt with, because it continues to subjugate and continue to deny our people decent livelihoods. So we must rise up. As a government of Kenya, we continue to program and allocate resources. 30 billion Kenya shillings today is allocated to social protection. to social security. So I want to close there and say it is now my honor and joy to declare the 2021 Inclusive and Justice Social Protection Conference in Africa officially open. Thank you, and God bless you.
Shared with us and all that are shared on this podium, as well as virtually by the chairman. So at this point, I'd like to call Edwin Rigi. He's going to be our online moderator. He's going to help us just get some feedback from the different participants online in regards to what has been said here, because like we've said, we're trying to be inclusive so that it's a quick interaction that is going to take us through. Then we shall then take a tea break. I'm sure we are really looking forward to that with the weather. A tea break, as well as a photo session. So, Edwin.
Hello everyone, hi. If you can hear me right, just wave. Awesome, perfect. So my name is Edwin Rege. I'm from PASGR, and today I have the great honor of moderating this hybrid session. So basically what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a nice little tool that we can all enjoy interacting, the people on site and the people online. So at this point, let me just share something. Excellent. So I have two sets of instructions for the people who are here and the people who are online. So for the people who are here, what I need you to do is open a web browser. It could be on your phone or your laptop. Go to your preferred web browser. It could be Firefox, Chrome, Safari, whichever. Just open it. If you have it open, say I have it open. Or give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Do we have for the people who are here, do you have your browser open? This is iOS. This is on our web yet. Do we have, I need to see more thumbs up. Do we have the table over there? Great. Table back there? Great. This table over here? Perfect. So I want you to look for menti.com. That's MENTI.com. Yeah. So that's for the on-site audience. Menti.com. MENTI.com. Then enter. Have you found it? Have you found it? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. The table over there, thumbs up. Perfect. So I want you to enter this code 45581373. This is for the audience here. The code is on the screen. You can see it. On-site audience, please enter that code. Now let's go to the online audience. The online audience, I've posted a link to the chats on Zoom. So what I want you to do is click on that link, and it will open a web browser, and it will take you straight to Menti. You don't have to enter anything. So this is for the online audience. Click on the link which I've posted on the chats. Yeah. Then it will take you straight to Menti. If you've done that, please indicate that you've done it successfully on the chat. The link again, I'm going to post it again. There it is. Perfect. I see already people responding. You can actually react to this slide by clicking on the like button or the heart button. I guess we're doing great. Online audience, are we together? Done, thanks. All right, yes. Perfect, great. Let's test drive this and see it's working, huh? Right? Thumbs up? Thumbs up? Perfect, great. So go to the next slide. And what will happen is that you're going to see this beautiful map of the world. So for everyone, both online and here, I want you to indicate where in the world you are. You just move the blue button on your screen, then click submit. Yeah. So for the online audience, you need to do this on Mentimeter. That's online. Yeah. Not on Zoom. We are not doing this on Zoom, but as soon as you've submitted, you can come back to see what we've done on Zoom. I see we have 8 people from, I want to presume this is Kenya, 3 people from joining in from South Africa. I see somebody from West Africa. I can't quite tell where. Is that Ghana? I think there's Sierra Leone, there's Southern Sudan. My geography may be off. Is that Antarctic? The Arctic. Yeah. All right. Have we all had a chance to vote? Anyone who needs some more time? So we can see for the most part, those who are participating in this are from Eastern Africa. Is this inclusive? Maybe that's a question for another time. There's no representation from Europe, continental Europe, Asia. Well, after all, it's a Pan-African event, so it's not a loss, is it? So let's move to the next slide. This is why I need everyone to participate. Thank you for participating in this and for letting us know where you're participating from. So for the next slide, this is what I'd like you to do. Tell us what your expectations of this for this conference are, and please include your name and where you're joining us from. So Mentimeter will give you a chat box. Please fill it in and indicate your name and also where you're from. What are your expectations for this conference? Please make it one sentence, not more than that. And as soon as you're done with that, press on the blue button, submit, and you should be able to see your feedback on the screen. So I'll give you half a minute. Thumbs up. That's good. Okay, great. Great. To be exposed to social protection from Uganda. Anonymous. Get more insights on social protection. Moses. Come up in concrete with concrete and actionable areas. Awesome. Awesome. There's quite a bit. Keep them coming. To come up with homegrown solutions to social protection. Great. To learn how other countries are managing social protection with the COVID situation. Excellent. To be updated on the new development in research on social protection in Africa and interact with researchers and policy makers. Excellent. Rachel from Kenya says, can I get that? To understand beneficiaries' perspective of social protection. Eric says, I expect that the conference will come up with innovative ways of designing Afrocentric social protection and design. This is great. This is excellent. I see we have close to, right now we have 32 responses at 33 and counting. Madeline, I think you forgot to post your actual response, but good to see that you're here. Open discussion on innovative and inclusive social protection. Maybe I can read one more. Dr. Zamakule from South Africa, expect a lengthy deliberation that will be informed by practical ideas. We need implementation, not talk show. Great, indeed we do. I see from Kwache Anthony from Kenya, inclusion of informal economy workers at all levels in social protection in Africa. Maybe I could do 3 more. Hedwig from Kenya, social protection in schools, both for the school administration and students, more so with, I guess there's a typo there, maybe I'm reading it wrong. You're concerned about the massive teenage pregnancies. Let me see if I can get, from Ghana, Jalil, have the opportunity to reflect on best approaches to design an Afrocentric and sustainable social protection in Africa. The last one, I'll read from Gabriel. Consensus that social protection is right and actions to move social protection as a national agenda financed by national government. All right, so let's move to the next slide. Thank you for participating in this. So in this next slide, this is what I'm asking. In one sentence, please tell us what was your key takeaway from the keynote address, and again, include your name and the country. In one sentence, please tell us what was your key takeaway from the keynote address, and please do include your name and the country. In one sentence. Reta says, learning what other countries are doing. Reta from Nigeria. As another response is, Africa is reflecting, Africa is self-introspecting, we must change the narrative together. Excellent. I see commitment, that has good. Commitment of government to protect citizens through social protection. Excellent. Agumba from Kenya says, social protection is key to inclusive development. These are excellent reflections. I see from Uganda how informal sector is being helped. Maybe I could read from Lois. We need to look inwards and develop local hybrid solutions that meet the unique needs and challenges we face in Africa. Keep them coming. Move away from NATO social protection. No action talk, only social protection. Excellent, Jalil. Dignity is a core aspect in social protection. That's Gidhure from Kenya. From Cameroon, respect human dignity for the vulnerable population. Indeed. Maybe I could take, I'll take Lillian from Kenya. Actualization of Vision 2063 by increased social protection and sharing best practices within Africa. Africa, though? I don't even missing something. Within Africa, I suppose. Which other one can I take? Uganda. The future is bright for Africa, and it is possible for government to be intentional about inclusion in social protection. Excellent. Another one from Uganda. Call on all countries to increase investment in social protection to achieve. That has disappeared. All right. Maybe I could read 2 more, then invite back the MC. The strides Kenya has so far made in giving funds to empower the elderly and orphans. This is from David. One last. Social protection in Africa is contextual and should be studied as such. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for engaging in this feedback session as we reflect on the keynote. I'll be back later on. For now, all I have to say is thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Bonasias, as you can see, there's already real-time feedback. That's the beauty of this forum today. They want to address us, then you wait to see feedback at night or in tomorrow's papers. So at least we are getting some good feedback, which I believe from the briefs we've seen and what we've been told here that the conference seeks to address when it comes to action and not just bringing things from the boardroom to what we say core ground. So thank you very much. So at this point, we're going to be having a tea break, and I'll just guide on how we are going to do this before we take our tea. Once we step out, to our left, there are some seats, there's some chairs that have been set up there where we're going to have a photo session with the CS and his team. So we'll invite you to join us there. And I'm going to be asking Anthony Odamo. He's right there. Anthony's at the back, the gentleman with the camera. He's going to be choreographing how we're going to do the photo session there. So we shall go there. Then after that, Buona CS will request you to kindly we'll cross this green lawn and get to where there's a bit of a setup for any questions from the media alongside your team and the team with you at the high table. Then from there, and at that time, the rest of us can come and have our tea. Just to let you know, like on Twitter, which is very active when it comes to important matters, we are currently trending at number 4, #social protection, which means the conversation is one, not just in this room or in the, and by extension on the Zoom platform, but also it is at a place where it is beyond the people who are physically here. So we are really grateful for that. It's an important topic and an important matter and set of issues that deserve a lot of attention. So at this point, I'll invite you all to just first let the gentleman at the high table to proceed to the chairs there. Anthony is going to guide, and then we all go and join them so we can take some photos. Then from there, we can have our tea quickly and briefly as we try to catch up with time on our program. Thank you very much. And then Wamoyo. Oh, I think you need the mic, right? All right, you can slowly also now go and join them, and Anthony will guide. Thank you. Sorry, for our online audience, is my mic on for them, right? For our online audience, just to let you know, our break is about 15 minutes, so we should be back within that time. So kindly bear with us. You could also get your tea, and then we shall meet here for some very insightful presentations. Thank you.
each and every one of us, from whatever perspective, understand exactly what we are talking about here. Because when we're talking about social protection, we're talking about a broad framework that caters for the extreme poor and those not really poor or not each and every one of us, but are vulnerable to poverty. In terms of helping exactly with equity, helping with opportunities. Because when we're talking about social protection, we're talking about a broad framework that caters for the extreme poor. And we all know that those there are increasing economic downturn, really quite a lot of risk, each and every one of us, but are vulnerable to poverty. The group that feels this equity are the poor. And those when we're talking about social protection, we're talking about a broad framework that caters for the extreme poor. And we all know that those there are increasing economic downturn, really quite a lot of risk, each and every one of us, but are vulnerable to poverty. The group that feels social protection. Each and every one of us, from whatever perspective, understand exactly what we are talking about here. Because when we're talking about social protection, we're talking about a broad framework that caters for the extreme poor and those not really poor or not extreme poor, but are vulnerable to poverty, in terms of helping with equity, helping with opportunities, and making sure that they are resilient to whatever shocks they face on a daily basis. And we all know that there are increasing economic downturns, there are quite a lot of risk and uncertainties, and the group that feels this most are the poor and those who are very close to the poverty line, which we also always say that they are vulnerable. And so social protection is a framework that helps them to find jobs, that helps to improve their productivity, that helps them generally to cope with the shocks, and of course help them to invest in their welfare going forward, in terms of health, in terms of education, and in terms of the totality of their well-being, including the well-being of members of their family, to prevent intergenerational poverty. And to some extent, it's beginning to be clear to everybody that social protection is also transformative. It is not only just protecting people, it also helps to promote them out of poverty, and therefore also has a big role to play when we talk about economic inclusion and social stability and inclusive growth. So social protection is very central to growth, particularly in countries or in situations where there is ample amount of poverty, ample amount of inequality. So in a sense, when you're talking of a kind of program or policies that buffers individuals from shocks and equip them to be able to improve their livelihood and create opportunities to build a better life for themselves and for their children, then you are talking about social protection. In the African region, 82% of the population, particularly of sub-Saharan Africa, do not have access to social protection. As at 2017 World Bank 2018 analysis. So a sizable number don't even have any protection, prevention, or promoting mechanism to support them. And I think this is very, very important to recognize. Even though there has been an increasing number of social protection programs over time, especially when there are major shocks in the world. When we had the financial crisis, that was when a sizable number of social protection programs moved into the African region, and there was a myriad of them. But the coverage has remained very small, very, very small, even though there are now more programs that are available. And that is something that will need to be looked at in terms of the dynamics of social protection. The other issue is that the most of the three groups of social protection that I've mentioned, the social assistance, social safety net, is the one that is very, very common that you find in many countries, because it's assumed that every other group can find some support through the market system, through other government policy, but it is only the poor who will probably need handout or some kind of support to be able to protect them from the shocks, are the kind of programs that you see most of the time. So it's usual in Africa that when you're talking about social protection, the discussion quickly moves into social assistance. The discussion quickly moves into social safety net. So when you go into literature, you see a lot more about social safety nets than you see about the totality of social protection. There are very little that you see on contributory pensions, non-contributory pensions, and also very little that you see even on labor market activities. And I will probably like you to use that lens when you begin to listen to the next presenter about the key interventions that you have in the African region. Programs that we have all recognized as social protection programs. We're talking of three classes. So we're talking of social assistance, or what we call social safety nets, which includes the very popular cash transfer plus, the school feeding, targeted food assistance, fee waivers, public works, cash for works. Those are social assistance programs. And then we talk about the insurance, which is always a way to prevent people from falling into poverty. And then we talk about old age, disability pensions, unemployment insurance, community health insurance, community-based services for the poor that helps to promote the access and utilization of education services, health services, water services, nutrition services, sanitation services. These are things that prevent people from falling into poverty, or at least serves as a shock absorber in terms of an insurance. And then we have the labor and job market programs that build the skills of the poor, that help them to search for jobs and improve their opportunities, and of course that improve their when we talk about improving labor regulations programs, and that allows the poor, and this is looking essentially most of the time at the informal sector. So depending on the nature and the complexity of shocks that a country or a context face, the combinations of this set of programs will decide what constitutes a social protection agenda for a particular country. The crisis that we are dealing with now, which is the crisis of the COVID, is the one that has again brought a sizable amount of attention on the issue of social protection in the African region, and that has led to expansion of existing programs. It has led to introduction of new programs, but essentially it is all still talking about social safety net, social assistance. So there is now a lot more emphasis on cash transfers. There are a lot more emphasis on public works. There are a lot more emphasis on social, a little emphasis on social pensions that are beginning to come up in a few of the country, especially in East and Southern Africa. So if you look at the graph that we have here, you can see the rapid expansion starting from the early 2000s, and now in the last few years it has actually grown substantially, given the fact that many countries are looking for how to support a sizable number of people that are now affected by the COVID-19 crisis, which brought along with it some economic shocks for many of the countries. financing is increasing, but it is still less than what is required. Most of the countries in Africa are spending about 1.5% of their gross domestic product on social safety nets, while countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Lesotho are spending between 3 to 6%. Ethiopia, Malawi, Rwanda is spending slightly more than 1%, and the majority are spending less than 1%. And those who are spending less than 1% includes Nigeria, Ghana, and Tanzania. This may slightly have increased in the last 2 years as a result of COVID, but historically, the spending on social protection is far low as to when you compare spending on energy, spending on healthcare, spending on education, and in some cases, spending on the military, particularly for security. So it's important to begin to think of how to increase the spending, and of course how to increase the coverage.
some greater sense of understanding of the issues at hand, after having the privilege of having the CS, as well as the leadership of PASGR just address us. So I'd just like to confirm from the technical team, do we have Dr. Daniel Doe ready? Edwin, do we have Dr. Doe ready? Okay, okay, they can't hear us. Okay. Now they can hear us, we're good to go. And do we have Dr. Doe ready? So I can introduce him to begin his presentation, who will be followed by Professor Winnie Mitula, then Professor Eric Nyambetha, who is physically here. The other two will be doing it virtually. All right, so if they can hear me, in the meantime, I think I'll just be reading, introducing Dr. Daniel Doe to you by way of reading his bio. Daniel Doe, PhD, is an academic at Western Sydney University, and he specializes in social policy analysis and social work practice. Daniel formerly worked at the Center for Social Policy Studies, University, and Edith Cowan University in Perth. He delivers professional development training in program evaluation, the design of social protection systems, and social science research designs on a variety of international capacity building platforms. Now, the doctor, or Daniel, has experience working in various countries, including Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Australia. Daniel's research interests include social protection for older adults and children, program evaluation, aging and long-term care, and the ways in which social policies mitigate various vulnerabilities. He is a frequent public speaker on a range of social policy, aging, and child protection topics. And just going by that bio, you definitely have a solid person who's going to be sharing a report and just a presentation to synthesize the report, the broader report, after whom we shall have Professor Winnie Mitula from the University of Nairobi, but I shall be back to introduce her. So is Dr. Doe ready? All right, I hand you over now to Dr. Doe, who is going to be presenting online. So those of us who are in Nairobi, in the room here, we shall be projecting the doctor's presentation and his speaking. Doctor, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone, wherever you might be joining us from today. I'll be talking on a topic, subject I titled Towards an Inclusive and Just Social Protection in Africa, a Balancing Act.
Just a second, we can't hear you yet. Just give us a bit. Sorry, doctor, just a bit.
Okay.
Sorry, you can hear him?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. Good. So we'll be talking on towards an inclusive and just social protection in Africa, a balancing act. And this is a synthesis report from a number of studies as part of this project. Now, so a brief talk about the context and the evidence, how we developed that, and where we intend this to go. So starting with the context, I think there is an overwhelming agreement that social protection is a good thing, in that it's made a positive impact on people who have benefited from it. This is not a platform to show all the statistics that are proving this, but then we are very familiar with successful stories across our continent that social protection does protect and does give some relief to people who are experiencing different forms of vulnerability across the continent and, of course, globally. But in Africa, we are also aware that there are concerns among policymakers, researchers, practitioners and of course development partners about issues of coverage, issues of equity and access. And in that, there is also an apparent lack of voice for most people, most actors who are supposed to be part of the social protection conversation. And then, of course, COVID-19 has really threatened some of the modest gains that we have made on the social protection front, which then calls for a new way of thinking about social protection and how, as Africans, we can position ourselves to derive the maximum impact of social protection. Now, fortunately for us, we have a very favorable context where social protection can thrive. One is that globally, there is this high level of commitment for social protection. The SDGs, several goals of the SDGs are clear on social protection. And of course, ILO's famous work on social protection floor in 2012 has been one of the important commitments across the globe. Of course, continentally also, we've seen that the African Union is making serious commitments towards social protection, and this has been mentioned earlier on in the keynote and other address that we've had. Now, so the agenda 2063 is quite clear on what we want as Africans. The other opportunity that we also have for social protection to thrive is some of the lessons that we are learning from the impact of COVID-19, which clearly has shown some of the inadequacies that we have in our existing social protection scheme. So then, what did we do? How did we develop this evidence? Now, so PASGR, supported by the Open Society Foundation, initiated the Inclusive and Just Social Protection Project. Now, the aim of this project were this: one, to deepen understanding of the status of social protection initiatives across the continent, and also provide some clarification on the actors who are supposed to be involved in this process. Then also to facilitate conversations between state and non-state actors about the whole dynamics of implementing designing and implementing social protection that is inclusive and that is just. Of course, it's that project also sought to examine the effectiveness of some of the existing social protection strategies or mechanisms with attention to what things might look like post-COVID-19 for the continent. Now, this project resulted in a number of activities. Now, 3 commission-backed studies were conducted. The first one was on the mapping of innovations in social protection across the continent, was conducted by Dr. Nyamba. And then, of course, we have mapping and scoping of social protection interventions from case studies from 8 African countries by Professor Mutula. And then, of course, we have another scoping work which was done on social protection in Africa, the conceptual and theoretical aspect of it by Professor Nyambeba. Now, so these 3 deck studies, some of which we'll be hearing shortly, provided huge scope for us to explore the issues further. And then there were 3 webinars which were organized alongside these scoping studies. The first webinar, which talked about the innovations, was attended by 255 participants across 33 countries. And then, of course, the second one on the interventions in social protection. And the third webinar was on the conceptual and theoretical context. Also heavily attended, and participants made important input and reflections on social protection in Africa. So putting all these activities or the outcomes of these 3 scoping studies and 3 webinars together, we arrived at a number of things as evident from across the continent. Of course, the subsequent speakers will be providing a bit more of detail on some of the things, but I will just provide a bit of highlight on the emerging issues across the evidence. One is that we have a missing or muted voices when it comes to social protection decision making. The process of social protection generally has been very technocratic. The conversation has been very technocratic. It's people who know and who are able to make input into it. Now, also, there are clear evidence of important actors missing out on the decision-making table, talking about non-state actors and grassroots organizations being critical members of this process. Of course, the voices of beneficiaries and their representatives are also obviously missing when it comes to decision-making about designing, implementing, and for that matter, evaluating social protection intervention. And we thought that this is an issue that requires to be addressed. Then, of course, there are emerging innovations across the continent, and this is important to note that somehow Africa and most African continents have made